Amen Thompson is the best player on the Houston Rockets. He's only in his second year. They're one of the best teams in the league, but it's true. Everything that this team could accomplish this season and become moving forward has to do with who he has become and what he can still grow into. An unbelievable development for an already extremely talented Rockets team. And I think everybody loves Amen Thompson right now, but to me, my favorite thing about him is how versatile he is and how many positions he can play, because this is a Rockets team that's really still trying to figure out who they are. They know that they can guard. They know that they're still kind of looking for that primary offensive guy specifically at the end of games. So players are playing in a lot of different roles. They're playing in a lot of different positions, and Amen Thompson can just kind of fill in wherever you need him to. If you're missing either Jalen Green or Fred VanVleet, he can play a little bit more at the point guard. Ime Udoka has talked about that when they've been missing one of those guys. Oh, we'll just slide Amen Thompson over to the point, which is crazy to say for a guy with his athletic profile. Obviously, you can play him on the wing. He can guard anybody that you want him to. He's one of the best defenders in the entire league, and he plays like a big guy around the rim. He's an unbelievable finisher, rebounds extremely well for his position. Anywhere you want him to be, he can be. But I'm starting to lean more into this idea of Amen Thompson as a primary offensive player for Houston. Because even though the jump shot isn't there, that's not really that big of an issue if you are the primary guy. And Houston has needed a primary guy for the entirety of this rebuild. They thought that Jalen Green maybe would be that guy, with then Jabari Smith being the kind of off-ball second option for them as they fully developed and grew into whatever their team was supposed to be. Then they brought in Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks in free agency. But the more I watch them, especially with Amen Thompson as the starter, I'm starting to think that this season, the end of the year going into the postseason, has to revolve around really developing this guy. He's still so young, still has so much room to improve, but he looks like what they thought they were getting in Jalen Green, what maybe they thought they were getting in Fred VanVleet at certain points in free agency. He is the guy that they need at the center of their team. He's an unbelievable finisher, can get anywhere he wants to. His handle is improving. His passing vision is improving as well. And it doesn't matter who he plays with. It doesn't matter what spacing you have around him. He's able to make it work. And my expectations for him just continue to change month by month, because when he was drafted, there was this real uncertainty around him as this overtime elite prospect, him and his brother Asar, and we knew that the athleticism was there, but neither of them can shoot, and what exactly their role was going to be at the NBA level, if they were going to be complementary players without a jump shot, was uncertain. And then it became clear that he was this unbelievable defensive player with crazy upside, crazy athleticism, and that was really what his role was going to be. Him and Tari Eason were going to be just this unbelievable defensive combination. That's largely what he was for the first part of the season. But now that they've really leaned into this idea of him being an offensive guy, someone that has the ball in his hands more, someone that plays more point guard, it just continues to change my expectations for him, my NBA comparison for him. I really don't even know who to compare him to at this point. Like, is the ceiling now a taller version of Russell Westbrook, but a guy that also defends like a top 5 player in the league? The ceiling seems pretty limitless for this guy right now. This is an unbelievable development for Houston, because having a main offensive guy has been a problem for them. They're one of the best teams in the league regardless, despite the fact that they don't have, a Luka or Giannis or a Jokic, whoever you want to put in there. They don't have that guy. They don't have an SGA that every time down the floor, they're like, hey, create some offense for us. And up to this point, the conversation has been, okay, how do they go out and find that guy? Can they get Kevin Durant? Can they get Devin Booker? They have these future Phoenix picks. They have been potentially an option for someone like Jimmy Butler as a offensive kind of focal point for them, although Jimmy isn't quite that at this point in his career. But if they don't have to do that anymore, if Amen Thompson is just that guy for them now, that changes everything. Now, realistically, the concept of him being this like SGA, Luka level offensive player is pretty unrealistic. I could see him being the Tatum level of offensive player, where he's not MVP caliber, dropping 30 and 10 every single night, but he's really, really good offensively and isn't necessarily an outstanding primary creator, but he's such a good two-way player that he kind of makes up for it. And if you have a good enough team around them, we've seen in Boston, then that is a kind of team that can win a title. And of course, Ime Udoka, that's a kind of player that he is extremely familiar with his time in Boston. Now, obviously, I don't want to overreact too much to a few weeks of Amen Thompson starting, and I really want to see him in a playoff environment where things are a little bit more physical, where his complete lack of a jump shot is just going to be more evident. If he's not the on-ball guy and he's playing off the ball while VanVleet, Jalen Green, and Şengün and these guys are creating, that is going to be more of a problem in the postseason than it is during the regular season. Teams are more locked in defensively. They're game planning more for you, and they're going to be really leaving him on an island, leaving him all alone. And there's ways to game plan around that. But seeing him in a playoff environment, seeing how much his defense translates, his physicality, his athleticism is going to be super, super exciting. And I really feel like Houston has found something here that changes their trajectory. I really believed up until really a month ago that this Houston team needed a trade. They needed something to add one of those main primary guys. I didn't think that that option was on the roster because I wasn't a huge Jalen Green fan. And as much as I liked him and Thompson, even going back to a month ago, the concept of him being the, franchise cornerstone player for them was something that never really occurred to me. I liked him defensively. I liked his athleticism, but it was all still high level complementary stuff. And the concept of Houston having all these draft picks and having the opportunity to bring in a star was always their path towards championship contention in my eyes. Again, even going back to like a month ago, I thought it was really smart that they have these Phoenix picks to where if the Suns thing goes sideways, they are the first option for Devin Booker. They're the first option for Kevin Durant because the Suns have to get their picks back in a scenario in which they're trading either one of those guys. I thought they'd be a real option for someone like Jimmy Butler as the kind of star focal point guy and then letting some of these other complementary players play around him. They've really had to play some of their guys in out of structure roles for them throughout the entire season because they don't have that real end of game guy. And maybe you were a big Alperen Şengün person and you thought that he could be the offensive focal point running stuff out of the high post as like a Jokic light, but I'm definitely reprioritizing everything offensively around what you think Amen Thompson can be. He's still so young. He hasn't even really played all that many NBA games yet. He certainly hasn't played that many NBA games as the primary main offensive guy. And everything that they do moving forward, I really think needs to revolve around him. It needs to get more on-ball reps. He can't come off the bench anymore. I don't care if the entire roster is healthy. Amen Thompson has to start. He's the best player on the team. He's the best two-way player on the entire team. More on-ball reps, higher usage, more of an offensive focal point. Whatever you got to do, I want to see what he can continue to push the envelope with his overall development. And if he ends up figuring out how to shoot the ball as well, right now I think most people are just kind of writing that off. He's working on it. He's trying to improve the jumper. The form really doesn't even look that bad. I just don't think he's in a position to take such a high volume because he's so efficient on the other parts of the floor. If he ever figures out the jump shot thing, the sky is truly the limit for what he can be. He's so fluid. He's such a good finisher at the rim. He can play every single position on the floor. And I actually think that people like myself and other people that cover the league have been underrating how good Amen Thompson has been. And now that he's really gotten a chance to start and be a bigger part of what Houston does offensively, we're getting a real idea of what actually this guy can become in the long term. And so if you're Houston, you're looking at your roster, you know that Amen is a focal point. You probably know that Şengün's a focal point. It kind of depends on where you are on Jalen Green. Then we've got complementary guys like Tari Eason. And you can just build around that. That's the beauty of what Amen Thompson has become, is he can be a complementary guy that defends and rebounds. He can be an on-ball playmaker. He can play point guard. He can play small ball center if you want. If you have spacing around him, that's cool. If you don't, that's fine. You just put him on the ball. It's not as big of a deal if he has the ball in his hands, if he's not a great spacer because he can just be the primary creator. This is a piece that has truly unlocked everything for Houston in a season in which they've already overachieved. They've been better than anybody thought that they would be. They've been this fantastic defensive team, and the hole in the roster, the hole in the future for Houston was the Jalen Green spot. It was, who's our creator? Who's our offensive guy? Who's our franchise cornerstone? Who's the guy that goes up against SGA in a playoff series? Who's the guy that goes up against Jokic in a playoff series? They didn't have the answer to that question. They still don't have the answer to that question. It's only been a couple of weeks of regular season basketball, but I could see in a year, 2 years, Amen Thompson being a top 10 MVP candidate. I really think that's the ceiling. That's the direction this guy is going, and it's just been an unbelievable development for Houston.